Good evening, barflies. Whoops. Good evening, barflies and lounge lizards, and welcome to Late Night Video. And tonight we'll be discussing The Blade Master from 1984. Directed by the groovy fantastico Joe D'Amato, who you may know from the Black Emanuel series and 3 out of the 4 Ator films, The Blade Master, also known as Ator 2, is the second film in the Ator series and the last one before the reboots begin, and it picks up sometime after the first film. Ator is now living in mostly isolation, training with his new buddy, a martial arts expert. His adopted sister/love interest has died of unspecified reasons, and our buddy Ator just really isn't himself anymore. Even colder and more stoic. But when his former mentor, who he must have studied under after the events of the first film, is kidnapped by an evil warlord, Ator teams up with said mentor's daughter and his martial artist pal to save the mentor and the day. Once again, we have actor, scholar, and athlete Miles O'Keefe as Ator. O'Keefe studied both political science and psychology in college and would work for a time as a prison counselor in the Tennessee penal system. He would then leave said work and move to California to become a semi-pro rugby player before taking a shot at acting. His big break coming from his role as Tarzan in the 1981 film Tarzan the Ape Man. And it is also very important to note, because this is a very important channel, that as a lad, O'Keefe was my favorite Dracula thanks to his portrayal in Waxwork. But come on, a long-haired Dracula? That's where it was at for me. Next we have Chen Wong as our martial artist Thong. Yeah, that's his name. He doesn't wear one though. At least not that I can tell. Wong only actually has 3 credits to his name: The Blade Master, The Mines of Kilimanjaro, and Inner Zone, which featured a screenplay by writer and director Claudio Fragasso of Troll 2 fame. And finally we have Lisa Foster as our female party member. Foster is probably best known for playing the lead in the 1983 Fanny Hill film, but she would eventually leave acting and begin working in visual effects, animation, and video games. She was the CG supervisor for the 1998 video game Parasite Eve, as well as the Evil Dead Hell to the King game. The Blade Master is pretty effects light. It's fairly grounded for a sword and sorcery film as well as an Ator film, but he does fight a giant practical snake at the end, and whereas the snake itself is pretty cheap, it's shot mostly in the shadows, giving it a pretty effective look once the battle begins. Remember way back when I mentioned Ator fighting a giant snake? Much like the first film, this one was produced in order to capitalize on the success of Conan, only this time Conan the Destroyer. But what I find interesting is that the first film really felt very little like Conan, whereas this one does share quite a few similarities with the first Conan feature, including a giant snake and his companions being a lady and a warrior with an impressive mustache. The way the film came about is rather interesting as well. Its story began, sorta, as a prehistoric film in the vein of Quest for Fire called Adam and Eve. Miles O'Keefe was set to star. Things were moving along, rehearsals had even started, when Miles O'Keefe dropped out due to moral reasons. So our buddy Mark Gregory of 1990 The Bronx Warrior stepped in, taking the role of Adam. But O'Keefe was still under contract, so D'Amato basically threw the Blade Master together quickly in order to take advantage of that. The Blade Master, as it is known in the West, would get a different cut and a retitle for its TV release. This version, known as Cave Dwellers, features additional footage from the 1963 film Tor the Mighty, and it's the Cave Dwellers version that is probably the best known, having been featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Wacky? Yeah, it's a bit wacky. It has an unusually long hand gliding scene, even though it is overall a darker film than the first. The Blade Master has been released several times on DVD, but apparently all of the Western versions are out of print currently. You can though watch it right here on YouTube, both in the Blade Master version and the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version. And I give this one 3 thongs, not in thongs out of 5. But to be honest, I would probably only recommend this one to Ator enthusiasts such as myself. For everyone else, I would probably recommend doing the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version first. And then if that tickles your fancy, going back and watching it, or watching Ator 1, 3, and 4, and then circling back to it. And that's all the time we have this week. Please like, comment, subscribe, and keep it wacky.
Wow.